Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little black subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that black subscribe button. Really does help our audience grow, really does help our channel grow, really does help and mean more than you could possibly know. So go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Also, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet 50 on any game, get $250 in free bets. Thank you again to Betfred. Thank you again to you. Now, here's the video that you came here for. So here's the deal. On Wednesday's Aaron Torres pod, we did ourselves a little mailbag segment on all things college hoops. We talked a little bit about Adama Sanogo, those transfer rumors, Rick Pitino, Ogana Onyenso from Kentucky. But what was wild was the second that I finished recording, about 7:30 Eastern, I opened our email for this show, Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. And I got a great email that I wish I had seen because I would have used it on Wednesday's show. And so rather than dismissing the email, I think it makes for a great standalone segment here on the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. And the topic surrounds Mackenzie Mgbako, who we also talked about on Wednesday's show. Mackenzie Mgbako, 5-star forward. I believe he might be the best NBA draft prospect in the high school class of 2023, was committed to Duke. But Duke's bringing back a bunch of players that were supposed to go to the NBA. Now they're not going. And this kid decided to reopen his recruitment. We talked about some potential landing spots for him. There's ties to Louisville. There's ties to North Carolina, potentially. G League Ignite, I think, could be in the mix as well. But one school that does not appear to be in the mix at all is the University of Kentucky. My old buddy Jack Pilgrim, Kentucky Sports Radio, he put out a tweet first thing Wednesday morning, Tuesday morning, whenever the initial news broke, that Kentucky would not be pursuing this kid, and instead they'd focus on some veterans, Harrison Ingram from Stanford, etc. And so when it became official that Kentucky was not going to pursue this kid, and remember, by the way, before he committed to Duke, heavily recruited by Kentucky, actually took an official visit with DJ Wagner, Kentucky's high-profile McDonald's All-American recruit, a few years ago. A lot of Kentucky fans were upset, and so it circles back to the email that I got about this particular topic, and it was so good that I wanted to recircle back and do this as a standalone thing here for the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page, and maybe I'll use it on Friday's show. I don't know. So the email comes from a Kentucky fan who's basically frustrated that John Calipari essentially has no interest in recruiting this kid. I'm going to read this email verbatim because it's excellent. It comes from Andrew in Lexington, who writes, "This is kind of a specific question, but I know UK fans make up a huge part of your fan base, so maybe you won't mind answering it. Is Calipari not making a colossal mistake by not going after Mackenzie Mgbako, a guy who we were a finalist for and who has experience playing with DJ Wagner and Rob Dillingham? He would pair nicely with Justin Edwards on the wings, and he's the type of long, athletic defender who Cal's defense used to be based on. Cal's best teams, John Calipari, are the best freshmen plus a couple of upperclassmen leaders. 2012, 2014, 2015, 2017, 2019, 2020. That's the model. And it's literally falling in his lap for him to just say, no thanks. Plus, the fan base is positively itching for some kind of win against Duke, and taking their best recruit and probably only surefire one and done would be an absolute gut punch for Shire. It's not like we are doing anything to speak of in the portal. It really seems like Cal has deluded himself into thinking he can convince Chris Livingston to return, and that is not happening. To borrow a phrase, what are we doing here, people? Again, that was from Andrew in Lexington. And so first off, let me say this. Shout out Andrew in Lexington. The fire and passion in the email. This is what I love about Big Blue Nation, okay? Big Blue Nation, highs, lows, peaks, valleys. They come after me sometimes. I said they weren't active enough in the portal a week ago. Everybody attacked me like I was the bad guy. But one thing you cannot deny about Kentucky fans, they have a great understanding and appreciation for college basketball, for recruiting, for how rosters are built, for how rivalries work. I mean, think about Andrew's email. It covered the whole spectrum. This is how Cal builds his teams. This is why this kid would be great for us. This is why it would be great to punch Duke in the stomach and stuff them in the locker like the little nerds that they are. Just kidding, Duke fans, in case you stumbled across this video. But the point is, this is what I love about Big Blue Nation. There is no more passionate college basketball fan base anywhere. And so let's not beat around the bush anymore. I want to address Andrew's question head on. Did John Calipari make a colossal mistake by not recruiting Mackenzie Mgbako, or it doesn't appear as though he's going to recruit Mackenzie Mgbako? And to answer Andrew's question, point blank, end of story, Andrew, I agree 100% with you, and I do think I will use the word colossal in terms of the mistake as to why John Calipari is not doing it. I think it is a colossal mistake that he is not recruiting this kid. And so let's start. I think if you're watching this video, you're probably a Kentucky fan. But the first thing that stands out, besides the fact that Mackenzie Mgbako is an insanely talented player, we'll get to that in a minute, he also kind of fits a position of need. If you go through, Kentucky has the #1 ranked recruiting class in high school basketball. They have 2 combo/point guards, Rob Dillingham, DJ Wagner. They have a 3-and-D wing, Justin Edwards. They have a shot-blocking 5-man rim protector, rim runner in Aaron Bradshaw. Great name, Aaron, by the way. And they have Reed Shepard, another McDonald's All-American who's kind of a slasher scorer on the wing. The one thing that they're missing, that dude that can be the stretch 4 that Jacob Toppin and Chris Livingston, essentially the role that they played this past year. A guy that is sort of big, but has guard-like skills, can play on the wing, can defend a guy that's 6'8", 6'9", but also a guy that can be a small ball 4-man that can stretch the floor offensively. As of right now, Kentucky does not have that guy on their roster. Now, why this is important, and something Andrew referenced, which has changed since the email. He says John Calipari is convinced, or the exact quote is, Cal has deluded himself into thinking he can convince Chris Livingston to return, and that is not happening. Okay, so this to me is an important part of this. Chris Livingston, who was slated to take that spot next year, the starting 4-man spot, on Wednesday did declare for the NBA draft, although he declared without an agent, or he has an agent, but you know what I mean. He's declaring with the ability to return to college basketball and come back to college basketball next year, okay? And so I think the Cal defenders on this one, I think you guys and girls know, I'm a pretty big Cal defender in general, but the Cal defenders on this one would say this to you. They would say, well, how can you recruit this guy how can you recruit Mackenzie Mgbako if we don't know Chris Livingston's future? First of all, what I would say to that is it doesn't really feel like Cal it's stopping Cal from recruiting other guys for that position. We know that he has reached out to Harrison Ingram, the big wingish Harrison Ingram, the transfer from Stanford, has the exact same skill set as Mackenzie Mgbako. So don't tell me it's strictly we're putting all the eggs in the Chris Livingston basket, because even if that's your argument publicly, privately, you've reached out to the best guy who fits the same description as Mackenzie Mgbako in the transfer portal. Oh, by the way, doesn't appear as though there's a backup plan with Harrison Ingram. And I would also argue this. I think if you're talking about right now who's ready to play college basketball this second, I'd say Harrison Ingram is probably the guy. But if you're talking about by March of next year, who's going to have more upside, I'll take Mgbako every day of the week. And I like Harrison Ingram. I've ranked like 5th or 6th best transfer in the portal right now. So don't tell me that it's all on Chris Livingston. We think he's coming back, because you're recruiting a guy at the same position. Harrison Ingram, by the way, I think Kentucky's behind the 8 ball. North Carolina has been very aggressive with him. My understanding was that Kansas, let's be honest, they were kind of sort of privately maybe kind of putting out overtures before he even entered the portal. So I don't think you're going to get this guy. And then again, it comes back down to you have to hope Chris Livingston comes back. And Kentucky fans who, again, they came after me because I said Kentucky isn't being aggressive enough in the portal, they'd say, well, you can't make any big rash decisions until Chris Livingston makes his decision. 1, you're recruiting Harrison Ingram, so don't tell me that. But then 2, I don't know if in 2023, 2024, you can operate like that anymore. Listen, we all wish we lived in a perfect utopic world where you could just wait until the middle of May to figure out what Chris Livingston is going to do. 1, don't think he's coming back. 2, if he doesn't come back and you then wait till May to try to replace him, You aren't going to find anyone anywhere close to the caliber of talent of Chris Livingston. And 3, I just don't think you should be doing it anyway. Listen, college sports has become, we've always said, oh, it's a business. These are all business decisions. Well, guess what? It's a business decision for Chris Livingston to test the NBA draft waters, and it's a business decision for you to figure out a backup plan in case he doesn't come back. Listen, I see it. I try to follow as much of this stuff as I can. Look at a place like Arkansas, okay? They have guys testing the NBA draft waters, but Eric Musselman is recruiting as though none of them are going to come back. Is that right? Is it wrong? Is it fair? Is it not fair? I don't know. But Eric Musselman's like, I'm not waiting until May 28th to figure out if this guy's coming back. If he wants to come back, we'll have a spot for him, but we're also going to recruit as though he's not going to be here. Arkansas, by the way, took their 3rd transfer portal kid on whatever day it was. Today's Wednesday in Khalif Battle. So don't tell me you have to wait for Chris Livingston. Here's the other part about Chris Livingston, by the way. Even if he does return to college, there's no guarantee he's coming back to Kentucky. He could enter the portal and go somewhere else. So again, I hate the idea that, to Andrew's point, you're putting all your eggs in the Chris Livingston basket. Couple other thoughts here on this. One, I just don't like this move because this is a talent acquisition business. And I'm sorry, Mgbako's the most talented player available. I would argue of every player that is currently not committed somewhere next year, either in the portal right now or high school players, Mgbako is probably, to me, the 2nd best player behind Hunter Dickinson. I'd take Mgbako ahead of Max Asmus. I'd take him ahead of Olivier Kongwa, ahead of Harrison Ingram, as I just said. So it's a talent acquisition business. The crazy part is he fits a position of need, as I just said. On top of that, he has a relationship with these kids. DJ Wagner, he's played with an AAU. Aaron Bradshaw, he's played with an AAU. He knows these guys. It's a position of need. You're not guaranteeing Justin Edwards something and then pushing him out to the side. If anything, it's only going to help Justin Edwards even more once the season gets started. And then there are these other ancillary things as well that I think are worth mentioning beyond his talent, beyond the fact that he knows these guys. As I said a minute ago, John Calipari, I'm not as much of a basher of John Calipari as everybody else because I still think his system works when he has upper-end elite talent. Now, you could criticize Cal because if he doesn't have NBA talent, it's not the same deal. But for most of his time at Kentucky, he's been able to have those guys. I even go back to this past season. It was a different deal. It was a different team when Severe Wheeler, B+ college player, was the point guard versus Cason Wallace, who is a no doubt about it NBA player. The team looked different. Everything ran smoother. So Cal's thing has always been, I'm going to accumulate the most talent and I'll figure it out once I get there. But now you have a chance to get a top 5 pick and no, I'm good. I'm going to recruit Harrison Ingram instead. What? So there's that part of it. I think Andrew brings up a really good point about the Duke element of it as well. You're trying to reestablish yourself because Cal seems to be the one guy that's like, you know what? I don't care where this sport is going. I still think the upper level NBA talent, even in the freshman class, is going to help me more long-term than having older players. Well, maybe the best player in the class just became available and you're not pursuing him. I disagree with it. And on top of that, it would hurt Duke. It would hurt publicly. Oh, by the way, here's the other part. Keep in mind, what are the schools that are pursuing him? Louisville. So you could have to face him in Louisville next year. I think the game's in Louisville anyway. North Carolina. I could be wrong. I think UK is slated to play North Carolina in the CBS Sports Classic next year. So you could face him in that event. Or he could just be playing for you. And then one last thought as well. And that's this whole notion of, well, Cal wants to fill out the roster with vets. I get it. Guess what? You could take another freshman and still take vets in the portal. First of all, the hope is that you get a couple of vets back, right? I still think Antonio Reeves is probably coming back. Possibly Chris Livingston. It's a good problem to have. Damian Collins, we'll see. The reports are he's probably not going to be coming back. Whatever. Agana and Yenso, CJ Frederick, we'll see if those guys decide to come back. The point I'm trying to make is you can still backfill the roster with vets. Like for all of the arrows that Kentucky basketball has taken, for a lot of players, the opportunity to play at Kentucky would be a dream come true, and they wouldn't mind coming off the bench, right? Think about, I'll just use my alma mater, UConn, as an example. Joey Calcaterra was a very important role player for UConn this year. He just wanted a shot to play at UConn, and he proved himself, and he earned his spot. You mean to tell me there aren't 10 guys like that in the portal that might not be the top players, the Hunter Dickinsons, the Harrison Ingram? You can still find veterans in the portal and still take this guy. So I don't get it. I don't like it. Andrew, shout out to you. That was a great question, and I hope you appreciate my answer. But I think John Calipari, as I said, I will use Andrew's word, a colossal mistake not taking Mackenzie Mgbako, or not even recruiting him, not even trying to recruit him. Colossal mistake. We'll see where he ends up.